This is Chef Robert Sevely with Flavor of Riverside. Today, we're gonna be cooking a any time of year type menu. It's also gonna be kind of like Spanish and American themed. And so the first dish that we're gonna do for you is going to be a meatball, but it's not an Italian meatball, it's more of a Hispanic meatball. And it's gonna have peppers and onions and all kinds of things in it. We're gonna do like a California red chili tomato sauce over the top of it. It's gonna be absolutely delicious, great for appetizer. Then we're gonna do like a jambalaya, and we're gonna do that in our pressure cooker. And with that, it's gonna be pork and rice and beans, and it's gonna have Spanish spices with it. And then lastly, we're gonna do a fresh white peach mini pie. And these can be done in the oven or on your barbecue. It's gonna be absolutely delicious. So stay with us as we get cooking. All right, for our first recipe, we're gonna do meatballs. And so this is like a Hispanic meatball. It's not necessarily a Spanish meatball or a Mexican meatball or a Latin, you know, it's just Latin inspired is what it is, really. And so what we're gonna do is I have a pan here, a pot really, and I'm gonna get a little bit of onions into it, okay, and start sauteing those. And I'm making the sauce first. And at the same time, I am going to also start making the meatballs. And so for the meatballs, I have a little olive oil in both these pans. I'm also gonna get a little onions going. And then after the onions, I'm gonna add a touch of garlic, more garlic to this one. And then garlic for the sauce. Saute that together. And then for the meatballs themselves, I'm going to add in red bell peppers and green bell peppers. Now, I like sauteing everything ahead of time for my meatballs. Even if I'm making a meatloaf or something like that, I'll saute all the veggies first because I don't want to steam them. I really want them to saute. And so we're getting that going. We're gonna hit both of these with a little bit of salt. So we're just kind of building flavors. A little bit of pepper. So now that's ready to roll. For the sauce, so I wanted to saute a little bit of onions and peppers, and then I'm pouring in my San Marzano tomatoes, just like that. And let me get all of that in there. Now, San Marzano tomatoes are just my favorite canned tomatoes to use. They're a type of tomato from Italy, but they're very, very tasty. So then we have the California, like Anaheim chili. And what I did is I soaked these in like hot tap water and I leave them in the water. And how I deal with these, you can find these at almost any supermarket, is I'll tear the stem off and I kind of tear them open a little bit. And I just dump the seeds out. You can tear them open all the way like that. And then I'm gonna throw them in with my tomatoes. And you can see some have a lot more seeds than others, but this is all I want. It's just the flesh here. I'll make sure those are down inside the tomatoes so they continue to cook. Just like so. I can get rid of this. I have ground beef and I have some beef chorizo. You can use pork chorizo if you want to. And so I'm gonna get some gloves on. Now as I look at my veggies are all nice and sauteed. Nice, those are beautiful, ready to go. And so in here for my meatball, I have my ground beef and I have my Mexican chorizo. This is the type of chorizo that when you cook it, it gets really, really oily. And so it's usually done with eggs and stuff, but it's a great flavoring ingredient. And we're just gonna mix these two together. And this is gonna make the meatballs all kind of taste like chorizo. It's gonna be really delicious. So then to this mixture, to kind of help me out, I'm gonna add 2 eggs. And keep mixing. The meat's really cold, so it takes a bit. And you can see I'm using gloves to mix with, so I can stay a little more sanitary. I don't get the meat all underneath my cuticles and stuff like that, or have to spend 10 minutes at the sink washing my hands. So once I get it like that, now I'm gonna take my vegetables and I'm gonna add them in. I'm not worried that they're hot, okay? I am gonna be a little bit careful. Then I'm gonna add some cilantro as well. And I'm gonna mix this up. So you can see I'm mixing this up really well. I don't want to overmix. Just want to bring them together. And then I'm going to take this glove off. I'm going to add a little bit of ancho chili and a little bit of smoked paprika. Set these aside. And then I'm gonna have some breadcrumbs. And a little bit more salt. And I'm gonna bring that back together. It's a little more breadcrumb. And this is a panko style breadcrumb that I'm adding. I'm just feeling how stiff this is getting. Now what's nice about this is I could do this as like a Spanish meatloaf as well. And so it's forming and holding together well. And so I'm gonna start rolling meatballs. And so I have a little bit of olive oil in here. And then also for my sauce too, I'm gonna add a little bit of the apple cider vinegar and bring that up to a boil. Set that aside. For the meatballs, these can be as big or as small as you want them, but I'm doing right about like 1 ounce meatballs. All right, delicious. This is looking really fantastic. Now that I have all my meatballs rolled out, we're just gonna sear them kind of on all sides. Just get some decent color on them. And while we're doing that, we're gonna make the sauce. So this comes over, and the last thing to this sauce that I wanna add, right before I start to blend it, is gonna be a little bit of apple cider vinegar. And so that's all together. Just gonna set that aside. We're gonna bring that back up to a boil. Oh, that looks delicious. And then we're gonna get out our blender, open up the lid, pour all the contents of the sauce into your blender. Okay, now want to add a little bit of salt to this, a little bit of pepper. Let's check the meatballs. I think they're ready to turn. Oh yeah. And I'm back on my sauce. Take this. I'm gonna blend it up. Now those chilies, it takes a bit. That's one of the reasons why I love my Vitamix. Okay, so now, so we have that. I'll give you a look at it. You can see it's really a nice, beautiful sauce. I'm gonna take this and pour this right over the top of my meatballs. Just like so. Turn it down to low. And then we're just gonna let this simmer. This can be a little bit messy doing it this way, but if you clean up right away, no big deal. All right, so we're gonna let the meatballs cook for a bit. I'm gonna get myself cleaned up. We're gonna start our Spanish-inspired jambalaya, and we'll be right back. Now for our second recipe and kind of our entree, we're gonna do a Latin-inspired jambalaya. And so we got a bunch of different stuff here. We have the onions, we have the garlic, we have rice, which is like a parboiled rice. You know, Uncle Ben's kind of perfect every time because it all lends itself really well. And then we have red beans. And so, how we're gonna do this is we're gonna kind of infuse some of the flavors, and then we're just basically gonna dump it all into the pot and go with it, okay? Now you can do this recipe in your Instapot. I know a lot of people have those. I have a pressure cooker here, which I'm used to using, but this works good in an Instapot, or a crock pot would work well too. Obviously the crock pot's gonna take some time. So we're gonna go in here with our onions. And we're gonna get our onions cooking. And just sauteing away. So, I've shown pressure cookers on the show before, and Instapots work very similar. I have a gasket here, like so, and then this valve's gonna come up with the pressure. The second line that's on this little valve, which that's what we're gonna bring it to, will be 15 pounds of PSI, so per square inch. And it's gonna cook very fast. This is pork butt that I have here. And I just cubed it up is what I did. You can brown it, but like I said, we're just gonna kind of dump it all in. I'm just gonna quickly saute this. I'm gonna add in whole garlic cloves, like that. All right, and so then I'm gonna add some spices. So I'm gonna go back with a little bit of our ancho chili. Gonna go in with some smoked paprika. Of course, some chili powder can go in. And then how about a little bit of cinnamon? Okay. And a little bit of cumin. So depending on flavors that you like, you can add this how you go. So now I'm gonna add some salt, like so. I'm gonna add some fresh cracked pepper. Okay. So now, once this cracked pepper's in here, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go in with my rice and my beans. And those are dried beans, those aren't canned beans. Dried rice, dried beans, I'm gonna mix those into those onions and garlic and spices. Then I'm gonna add all my pork. This is right about 3 pounds of pork. You can obviously do less. And I'm gonna get those all mixed in. So like the spices and onions and the rice are all sort of together. That's beautiful. All right, so now I'm gonna add a mordello, okay? So this is right at 24 ounces. So this is gonna be my first kind of 24 ounces of liquid. Okay. And then I'm gonna add some stock, like so. And I'm basically like almost covering the meat. So that was just like a beef stock. You could use a chicken stock or a pork stock. And then I have an orange that I'm gonna cut open and squeeze that in. I could throw in the whole thing, but a lot of times if I throw in the rind, it can get bitter. Something I can do is I can cut off just the zest, kind of in a few bigger pieces, or I could use a zester if you wanted to. Just like that. Throw those in. Cut this open. Squeeze that in. And then my last ingredient here before I lock it up is I have a couple of Scotch bonnets or habaneros, okay? And I'm tossing these in whole so I can then retrieve them. All right, so those go in. We're gonna get my lid on. Just like that. And we're gonna start this coming up to pressure. All right, for our final recipe, we're doing the white peach. It's like a peach pie, like a mini peach pie. So I have my muffin tin. I went ahead and I sprayed it with some Pam, so it's ready to go. And I have it sitting over here on the side. So let's make the pie dough. So I have 4 cups of flour in here. I'm gonna add right about 1.5 sticks of butter. And it's already diced up and ready to go. And then I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of white sugar, pinch of salt, and I'm gonna start mashing these together. So I like to use my hands. Sometimes I'll use a fork or a dough cutter or something like that, but I'm just getting in here and I'm taking the nice cold butter. Remember, it's right out of the refrigerator is what I want. And I'm just moving it and kind of kneading it into the flour with my hands. And I'm essentially gonna make like pea-sized pieces or so. The whole idea behind this, first is just having melted butter and pouring it in here. This butter is gonna melt away when it bakes and create a little pocket and make the pie crust really nice and flaky. And so when I get it to like this point here, sort of mix it together, and it's gonna come together even more as we add like our liquid and mix it. All right, so now I get it to this point, and you can see it's like, you know, mealed in there. Almost looks like what they call like a meal or like a cornmeal sort of look to it now. All right, so now instead of water, I'm gonna add ice cold milk. Now the milk's gonna help seize up the butter and help me make the dough. So right about like 1/4 to 1/2 cup, getting in here, and you can see I'm using it with gloves. And I'll eyeball this part. So a little bit more. And I wanna mix this just till it comes together. A little bit more. So that was right at about 1 cup of liquid now. And here comes the dough. Okay. So now I just bring it together so it's all incorporated without over mixing it. Okay, beautiful. Bring it out onto my cutting surface. Take my gloves off. Get rid of my milk. And then I have a little bit more like bench flour here. And I'm almost gonna treat it like biscuits. Like I don't wanna over mix it. And you can see, like, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but as I'm rolling, I can see the little lumps of butter in here. So just, I'm bringing it out to kind of a fairly thin state, like maybe not even 1/8 of an inch, like a few millimeters wide, like so. And then I have 12 spaces on my muffin tin, so about like that. And then I'm going to trim just using my knife. And I'm just going to cut squares. That's what I'm going to do. Like so. All right, so now cutting squares. Okay, I get my 12 squares. And then now I'll just bring those up. Kind of set these aside. If it gets a little sticky, you just add a little bit more flour. No big deal. And mostly I'm just making space for myself to work. Okay. All right, so then I bring my tin up. And I'm just going to take each one of my squares and I'm just going to push it down into the muffin tin. But then now, what I'm going to do is I'll add a little piece of butter down into each one. Like so. And then a little bit of brown sugar. Right on top of that butter. And then I have my peach halves, and these are white peaches. And I've taken the seeds out, I've just cut them in half. I made sure that they're good and ripe. And then we're gonna set these down right on top of each one. Just like so. So you could do these on your barbecue if you would like. You know, if it's summertime or a hot spring day and you can get stone fruits and stuff like that, you can do this right on your barbecue. Set this whole thing right on your barbecue, probably on low with the lid down, and all depending on what barbecue you have. If the grill, if it has coals or something like that, then you know, very few coals in there, just enough to get it nice and hot. But you can see I sort of press these down in here. And I have my oven set at 400 degrees. And so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a dab of butter right into where the stone was. And that's why fruits like these are called stones, because they consider the seed like a stone. So plums, prunes, peaches are all considered stone fruits. And they're a summertime fruit, essentially. Okay, so now I have that. Now, of course, I'm gonna go with brown sugar right on top. And then, so this doesn't make a giant mess in my oven, I'm gonna set this right on top of a sheet pan and then into the oven. On your barbecue, you probably wouldn't necessarily need to, but you still can. And so now this is gonna go into the 400-degree oven. It's gonna bake right for about probably 20 minutes to a half hour, and then we'll check it out and see where we're at. So we'll be right back. Our pressure cooker has been done doing its thing for right about like 15 minutes or so now. Now we're gonna start releasing the pressure out of it. Kind of best way to get the pressure out of it is a couple of ways. One, I can haul this all over to my sink and I can release the pressure really fast. Another way is I could just let it come down naturally, or another is I could use a spoon and I could allow the pressure to come out that way. And so we just want to release the pressure and see what we got. Now this is a good thing, is I can always start this back up again relatively quickly, because even though I'm releasing the pressure, it's still boiling in there. And so I do want to be careful because it's just really, really hot. Remember, water boils at 212 degrees. So when you throw it in a pressure cooker, the reason why it works so well is it's cooking hotter than that because of all the water vapor has turned to steam. And so you can see it's all the way down now. And so I'm just gonna have a towel with me just in case. And I'm gonna release it, pull the lid off, and oh wow, look at that. In here is our pork Latin-inspired jambalaya. And you can see, you can just spoon it right on with the beans and the rice and all this deliciousness. Man, that just looks amazing. Maybe a few more pieces of pork up on here. Get it like that. I'm gonna clean up your edges. Little bit of cilantro on there. Okay. Just absolutely gorgeous. Then the other thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plate my meatballs as well. So I'll just move the pressure cooker to the side. I'll bring over the meatballs. Bring this plate up here. And then for that, put right about like, probably get like 5 meatballs onto this plate. Yeah. Like so. And we'll take this and we'll put a little bit of that Anaheim chili tomato sauce over the top. Gorgeous. And so for this one, I'm also going to hit it with just a little bit of cilantro. That's going to be delicious. And then lastly, last thing that we want to look at and plate up is our dessert. So earlier we did a white peach like pie, mini pie. So I'm going to pull these out of the oven. And look at that. Those just look amazing. And so I'm going to set this all off to the side here. Right up top. Bring this over. Going to bring a couple of these out. Look at that. Gorgeous, just sitting up. Whole little peach on there. Gotta pull them out while they're still hot because there's some sugar on the bottom that gets kind of absorbed into the crust. And if you let them cool off too much, that crust is just gonna weld in there with the sugar. So what I might have to do is, if I say I refrigerated these and made these the day before, is put them over my fire on my burners first, and then they should just release. So that's gonna be delicious. So we have all this, we're gonna do some tasting. We're gonna come out with my family here at the end. And so we'll be right back and we'll taste everything. Welcome back. I just wanna introduce a couple of people. This is my gorgeous wife, Tara Sevely, and my beautiful baby. This is River Karen Sevely, and they're just helping me out today. So we're gonna taste a couple things, babe.
Okay.
So these are the Spanish-inspired meatballs.
Okay.
Go ahead and dig in. I'm gonna dig into the peach right here and get some of this out, and we'll just see. I wanna see what River thinks.
That's really good.
Wanna try that?
Kind of big for her.
It is a little big. Peaches came out wonderful. Oh, they are really good. Try this. Isn't that good? How do you like the meatballs?
They're good. They're nice and smoky. It's great.
All right, so thank you very much for joining us today. Just to kind of recap, we have the Spanish-inspired meatballs, we have the Latin-inspired jambalaya, and then we have the white peach like mini pies. They're absolutely delicious. Make them for your family. This is Chef Robert and his whole family saying, keep cooking.